Hello and welcome to the Jerich Show. I am Javad Malik, and I am indifferent to the fact that someone might have made it back from Blackhat and DEFCON alive.
Welcome to the Jerich Show, featuring your hosts Javad Malik and Eric Crone. Timely topics, poorly presented.
You know you're glad I'm back. You missed me. Well, it's good to be back. It's good to be home. You know, that's I don't know, been home for a long time, and the first time out was a very long one. That was a long trip, and it is nice to be back in Florida, where now my biggest issue is the fact that we may have tropical storms this weekend. I mean,
Wow. So how was so we got 2 days of you at Blackhat, and then it was a weekend, and you sent me some videos, and it was a weekend, so I wasn't working because I have a life outside of work. Or at least I try to portray that.
I was really glad that third time I stayed up so late to get that recorded and then uploaded for you to do something with. And then you were like, yeah, no, that's okay. Appreciate that.
So how was DEFCON?
So it was a really interesting deal. And if you've ever been to these before, it's just pandemonium there usually. Blackhat and DEFCON is just crazy busy, except this year. This year was really different. Now, the Blackhat part, if you see our recaps, I did some recaps and I talked about it a lot. It was eerily quiet and low traffic. They were estimating maybe 5,000 people, and that was the people that were trying to sell, like, folks on exhibiting there. But there were a lot of groups that pulled out last minute. Even the conference hall, like I said, it was so weird. They didn't have carpet down. And I know I kind of harp on that, but it was such a stark difference and one of those just very cold feeling things when it came to Blackhat. Now, we worked for No before, and our booth was constantly busy. Now, it was a 10-foot by 10-foot booth with like 5 people in it, which means that it was so packed. Yeah, it was crazy. They're actually having to send people out on occasion just because there were too many bodies in that, right? And we did a small booth because we didn't know what to expect, basically. But what was cool about it is there was actually times where you could find a place to sit and start chatting with people. Met up with Matt Stevenson, someone whom you know pretty well. He showed up because I had my camera gear and I was sitting at a table back there, and he showed up, dropped his gear down and started unpacking his stuff a little bit. And we started chatting, and he said, I knew since you had gear, we'd get chatting. And now it looks like we're going to, have a little coordination with him. But that's the kind of stuff that's really hard to do when there's 300 other people surrounding you at the time. And so there were some definite pros to that. I mean, you know how Blackhat is. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it sounds good that it was a bit smaller. It's not as crazy, because what happens is a lot of times, especially DEFCON probably more so than Blackhat, is it's busy because you can't get into the thing. So it's all hallway con. And even in hallway con, what happens is that you end up just rushing and having really insignificant face-to-face encounters with 200 people. So it's like, hey, how you doing? I follow you. We follow each other on Twitter. Great stuff. Loved your talk. I read your blog. I listened to your podcast. All that kind of stuff, which is all great. It's very good in a way, but you kind of lack that quality. It's kind of like the Jerry Maguire effect: fewer clients, better relationships. So I do like the fact that you can sit down and have more meaningful interactions with people, because that's really how you get to know people. That's how if you can spend 15 minutes, half an hour having a coffee and chatting to someone, or having dinner or lunch, that's where you really get to understand what the person's all about, what they do, what they don't do, what they know, who they know, all that kind of stuff. And this is like one of the arts of networking, which we will cover in more detail in our upcoming book.
Yes,
Spoiler
yes,
alert.
we will. And you know, he just dropped the bomb there, folks. There will be an upcoming book. If you want to know when that book comes out, be sure to subscribe, like, and share this podcast. We will make sure that we get you the info. It will be broadcast here when it happens. That's right. But yeah, you know, you're right. And being able to spend a few minutes with somebody chatting, as opposed to those quick kind of drive-by things, it lets you get past the formalities and get down to now we're just people. Now, DEF CON, you're right. It's usually hallway con. It's crazy. And if you've ever been to the Sky Talks, it's basically these, at least right, you know, over at Mandalay, not Mandalay, at Paris and what is that? Harrah's, I think. Anyways, you go down the hall and there's the Sky Talks that were way up on the top of the building. You got to take an elevator up there to like the 26th floor. And there was like an hour-long wait to get up there. They're the non-recorded talks. And I actually walked in just to do it. I walked in, walked right up to the elevator, hit the button, got in, and went up. It was crazy. And if you know what I'm talking about, if you've been there, that was just kind of crazy. And they didn't really have talks like they did. I did sit in on an interesting panel about the IoT stuff and some regulations that you over there in the UK are coming out with related to IoT stuff. And so there was a roundtable on that we got to participate in and some of that stuff. But then back down in the main area, it was a whole lot easier to get around. The body mass was much, much lower. They were absolutely militant on people having these wristbands that you had to have. When you signed up, you had to prove that you'd been vaccinated. And they were all over that. The goons were all over that, the security folks. And, you know, I met some really cool people because we had a chance to chat. So ended up talking to a guy named Josiah, who just, he's just getting into the field. You know, he's just doing his thing, getting started, sent himself to DEF CON to see what it was all about, and ended up just kind of meeting him and seeing some old friends, Mandy, Survival Tricks, and a lot of those people out there. It was just really cool to be able to do that. And we ended up going from there, meeting him. And as a group, a few of us went over and we got a table in about 15, 20 minutes at a burger place and sat around and talked. So it was fantastic from that standpoint. Now, it'll be interesting to see how much of a super spreader event that is. And I know you're... I know you're going to say I told you so, but I am going in for a COVID test this afternoon. I've been under the weather since I've been back, and that's okay. I mean, there's con cred anyways, but being on the road next week, I want to make sure that I'm not going to go out there and be a germ sprinkler. You know, if I do have it, and I'm just feeling a little bit under the weather because I have been vaccinated, I have already had it. I just don't want to spread it. So yeah. We'll look forward to that, folks.
Yeah.
And I know you're saying I told you so because, you told me so.
Yeah, I did. But you're right. I think there's obviously con flu or con crud, as you said. That's definitely a thing. I think that just happens every year in Vegas. And then there's the I think there's also a bit of a shock to the system where it's been over a year and it's like the first time you're at an airport, you're flying, you're traveling. Honestly, even now when I go out for drives, I'm just not used to it. If I go for a drive and it's like over an hour, I get like my back gets tired. I get tired. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. How did I used to do this? And I think about traveling like to the States now, and I'm thinking, am I mentally prepared for a 10, 11-hour flight? And I'm like, nope, I cannot do that.
You know, that flight just from Tampa out to, I ended up going Tampa to LAX and then Vegas. That flight to LAX was brutal. You know, and now my back was hurting from the car accident, so I ended up taking a Flexerol, which made it a whole lot easier just to like sleep through a bunch of it. But those flights were brutal, man. Those were long, long hours. And we're used to, you know, when we traveled a lot, you hop on a plane, it's just second nature.
Yeah.
But yeah, so much has changed. And I think it's interesting here in the States, and I don't know about in the UK. I do know in Australia, this isn't the way because we talked to JJ about this. But these planes are absolutely packed. I was not on a single flight that had a single seat available. Wow. And every single one was offering like gift cards if you would give up your flight for someone else. I mean, it was insane how packed these flights were. I know JJ was saying over in Australia, one of our colleagues, she was saying that they're still running with the middle seats empty, and the flights you can book the day before or a couple days before, no problem. Here, that's just not an option anymore. How's it in the UK?
I don't know. I've not been on any flights. I do know for a while they were skipping a seat if you weren't family or something. I really don't know. I haven't looked into it. I've got no intention of flying anytime soon, so I'll cross that bridge when I get to it.
So I don't know if it's the media or if it's actually happening, but I'm seeing more and more stories about incidents happening on airplanes. Like this happens on occasion, somebody does something stupid, but we've had some really drunk people, and no offense to like Spirit and Frontier Airlines, but y'all are like hoarding all of these lunatics, right? It's kind of the low end budget ones. But we had the one guy that was incredibly drunk. They had to duct tape to his seat, and he was yelling about how his parents were worth all these $1 million, and he's flying an ultra budget airline.
Yeah.
There was a flight diverted from Hawaii to LA, I believe 2 days ago, something like that. I believe one of the kids on there was autistic, started having some issues. I don't know the whole deals. The reports say that the 13-year-old was trying to kick out the window while they were in the air, and I do believe they were in an exit row seat. So that's even possible when you're screwing around with an exit row door, right? So they ended up having to divert, go back to Hawaii because this kid just lost it midair. And I mean, we keep seeing these over and over again. And I've seen drunk people on planes. I've had them sitting next to me. I think I've showed you the picture before, the guy coming out of Vegas, both hands all the way down his pants and his polo shirt pulled over his head. This is who I flew next to for a while. I mean, it is what it is, but I don't know. Are you seeing the same sort of thing over there?
No, not really. See, again, I think the difference is that we don't really have that many domestic flights. We can pretty much drive from one end to the country in the same time it gets you to get from one state to another.
True.
So, as the saying goes, in the UK, 100 miles is a long way, and in the US, 100 years is a long time ago. So it's
yeah. I talked to a lady once. I was in DC, just kind of cruising around. I ran across this British gal, and we were chatting, and she said she'd been out in Arizona, and now she was in DC. And she said, I looked at the map and I said, oh, well, I want to go take a quick drive over here and check this place out. She said, my mind was in like the UK map size mindset. And she's like, I'm 3 hours into driving and I'm like halfway there. And she's like, in the UK, you'd be in whole other countries, like several countries away in 3 hours of driving.
Yeah.
It's a different world. Yeah.
So I think that's what makes the big difference. But anyway, shall we move on to the stories? Enough yapping.
Yeah, let's continue yapping, but about stories.
Enough of your jibber jabber, fool. So what do we have here? This is a story that keeps on giving. So I read this story earlier in the week, and at that time there was this cryptocurrency exchange that connects different exchanges together or something like that. And they had around $600 million stolen.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's put it in perspective, folks. That's over $500 million in cryptocurrency stolen. That's a lot of money.
That is a lot. And then and then they went on Twitter. So this is their incident response plan, I'm assuming. And I think that more companies, if you don't have this as part of your plan, put it in there because clearly it works. They went on Twitter and said, please, whoever you are, can you give us our money back? And I laughed at that when I saw it. But I'm not laughing now because apparently out of the 600 million, nearly half, 260 million of that has been returned.
that's
This
still a
is
$250 million that's
yeah.
been returned. That I don't know if that qualifies as the most valuable tweet ever put out there. Like, as far as revenue generation, I'm not sure where that stands on things, but holy crap, they were like, yeah, here's 260 million back, right? And they're saying they're going to return more. This story is so full of "are you kidding me's." I just don't even know where to start with this one when I started reading it. It's crazy.
No. There were some exchanges. They said that they will try. So they said, because they tracked where the money went to. It went to 3 different wallets, I think. And some of the exchanges said, okay, we'll try to keep an eye on. They don't really have a mechanism for blacklisting or blocking certain wallets, but they said we'll keep an eye on it. So maybe this was the money that went into one of the wallets, and maybe it was in a jurisdiction or under the control of parties that were like, we don't want this heat. So they might have returned it. I don't know.
So what's interesting is, when you read the story, they said that the attacker said that the idea wasn't necessarily ever to steal money, but to kind of prove a point, which sounds really wonderful. But, when I got $500 million in the bank, I've proven my point, and I'm buying a small island in the Caribbean. That's where I'm living the rest of my life, right? I mean, you don't just go, oh, it'll be nice. So there has to be something behind it. And as far as the money goes, there's enough Bitcoin mixers out there and, cryptocurrency mixers out there that, frankly, unless it's a really obscure type of cryptocurrency that they took, it's really easy to mix that stuff up. And if you don't know what a Bitcoin mixer is, basically it's a service that for a fee, you basically throw a bunch of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency into this bucket of money, and then it gets distributed to you out of the other side. So it basically launders the money for a fee. And it's not like you dump a bunch of money in there and immediately a transaction comes out the other end where they go, oh, $500 million in here and 490 million out here. No, it does it slowly over time. You can break this up so there's no telling where it's coming from, and it makes it so much harder to trace. I mean, this is not hard to hide this kind of money, and this is why the criminals love to use it so much.
Yeah.
But it just blows my mind that they would basically give $260 million back and say that they're planning on giving back more. We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, this is the equivalent of like, it's just a prank, bro. It's these YouTubers that go out there, they do some questionable stuff and then say it's just a prank, it's a social experiment. So
it's security research.
Yes, that's the other one. I'm a researcher, not a hacker.
Yeah. Oh man. So there it is. Wow,
there it is. Story. So we will keep our eye on this story. We will let you know if more money is returned or not, or if the founders that are then found to be complicit in this, because that's happened a number of times where founders have run off with the money and what have you. And it's just, and you think about how sophisticated the criminals are in laundering traditional money through traditional banking systems. I mean, this is just a piece of cake for them.
Yeah, it is nothing.
Okay, so the NCSC last year put in place a they last year or the year before, I lose track of time with it since the COVID and the lockdown. It's just, I don't know whether something was 1 year ago or 3 years ago. It's a bit like the TVA. Time moves a bit differently down here now. But NCSC, they're the UK's National Cyber Security Centre. They look after all things cyber from the government. And last year or the year before, they introduced a phishing@ncsc.gov email address where they said, hey, if you receive something that looks like a phishing email, forward it on to us, and we will then investigate it. We'll look into it and everything. And that was really popular. I think within the first 3 months, they had over 1 billion emails sent through to them. It was a very popular thing. Now, obviously, I think with those things, it's a small percentage of people that use it excessively, and still the majority of people. If I ask my friends, like, hey, have you heard of that? And they're like, what's that? No idea. But it's a good feature and a service out for the general public. And now they're taking it one step further, clearly inspired by the phish alert button or the PAB by KnowBe4, but
Clearly.
But they're now adding a button that people can add to Outlook on Office 365 or Microsoft 365, so that when you receive an email, rather than having to click forward and put in the NCSC email, you just click, hey, this is suspicious. You click that, and boom, off it goes to NCSC, which I think is a decent move. The easier we can make it for people to report things, the better. It could be a bit confusing because a lot of the email providers, they have their own spam buttons on there as well. So Google and Microsoft and everything, they're like, hey, this is a spam email, and you can click that and it'll move it into your spam folder. So what do you think of this? Do you think it's something that's worthwhile? Do you think it's going to get used a lot?
Yeah, so I got a couple thoughts on this. Number one is the spam button is different than reporting phishing. So spam is different, but users don't always know that. So I'm sure of this like 112 billion reports or something that you said that they got before, a lot of that was spam, not necessarily phishing. Okay. But I'm going to put this out here. I'm going to frame this in a different way. The government is giving you a piece of software that has access to your email. Please install it. Okay. I don't know about you. I'm from America, and I just thought about this. This is an interesting angle. Here, we're the government. We're here to help, right? And here's this piece of software that you're going to throw in Outlook and have access to all your emails. Is it nefarious? Probably not. But it did just make me think about how often, how comfortable would we feel if they're like, hey, install this piece of government software on your computer and it will occasionally make a funny noise or something. We'd be like, yeah, no. My other question on this, though, is when they get all this information, what do they do with it? Do they actually action on it? So you've obviously heard of this before. It's something I had never heard of. But do they do anything with it? Do they share this information with, say, the private sector and say, this is what we're seeing? This is essentially IoTs or things to put into your filters to block. These are bad IPs, et cetera, et cetera. Or does it just go into a black hole?
I think as far as the individual reporting it goes into a black hole. I believe they do use the information to take down websites or whatever, or some whatever it is, if it is in their ability. But I don't really. I've used it a couple of times myself just to test it out. I've received some phishing emails on my personal things. I forwarded it on. Never heard anything back, which I think is a mistake in a way that you don't want to. It's impractical to expect them to respond to everything manually. An automatic response doesn't give you much, but I think you need to get some feedback loop in there that says, hey, thanks for reporting this. We checked it out and it was a phishing email and we're doing something about it. Or it wasn't a phishing email. Stop signing up to websites that, you don't want to receive marketing emails from or whatever. So I think that there is that difference, but overall, I think I'm not as cynical as you in that I'm not as paranoid of my government as you are. I think it probably all it does is literally just forward the email on. Again, I don't know. You could be right. Weirder things have happened. What is strange though is not strange. I think what the big gap is the education and awareness that, hey, these features exist.
Yeah.
And I think this is where it becomes like, I don't have the figures, but I would assume majority of these reported incidents are people who already work in IT or are somewhat tech savvy. They might have the features in their workplace and they're using this for their personal stuff. Or it could be small businesses, some IT manager saying, oh, this is the easy way I can report to the government, do my part. But until we make this a broader issue so that people are more aware that this feature is out there and we can do something by clicking it, and then they get feedback to say that, hey, this is right or wrong, then I think that's the big challenge.
And the feedback part is actually a really good point there. And you're right. The automated ones aren't perfect, okay, but it would be something, right? Hey, thanks for reporting this. By the way, if you'd like to learn more about, go to this link, right? I think that is a point that would be missing that could be very easily used with that, even if it's not specifically, hey, this email was a this or that. It's a missed opportunity to respond and say, awesome, thank you for reporting this, because obviously the person is going to care if they're doing this, right? They're going to be someone who is actually caring about this. So you send them back something and give them a resource. Hey, this is what we're seeing this week in scams or something, or send them to one of those pages. This is how you can identify these things in the future. Use it as a way to give them some sort of an action that they can do that's helpful. Not necessarily the same one every time, maybe run through a list of 5 or 6 auto-generated replies. But I think that could actually be a very useful part of this without having to get into we reviewed this and yes, it is portion.
Wise words. I think it's one of those broader issues. We clearly have our own thoughts and views on it, but it's also something that extends far beyond the restricted nature of an organization. So it goes into your broader, like, how do you make societal change and change these behaviors. But I think it's something we need to keep plugging away at and keep doing, so that hopefully in 10 years' time, there will come a time when people will laugh. They'll look back and say, do you remember that time when people didn't know what a phishing email was, or they didn't have a process to report it, or they didn't know how to report it? And now look how clever we all are.
Well, and the thing is, our lives are digital now. We do so much online. We get mortgages on our homes without ever meeting anybody, right? It's all online. We do our banking online. I haven't talked to a bank teller in 5-7 years, getting a car loan. I mean, you can buy whole cars over here online, like Carvana. They show up, they drop it off, or they send you a little token. You go to the car vending machine and it spits your car out, right? All this stuff happens digitally in the digital world. But what it's done is it's opened so many more threat vectors for people, because now it's not just the person that's outside the bank that's waiting to pickpocket you, right? They have to be there for it. They're able to fire off these sorts of attacks from an entirely different continent, many of them at a time. And so they become much more prolific. And we as humans, and I don't care where you live, I mean, even some of the smaller areas, and less developed countries, if you will, they still fall into these traps. Those that use mobile for everything. We've got to be able to get used to dealing with this, and people have to get more comfortable with this and more educated, because it's just where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I still think that for all the apps that are out there, actually trying to do a lot of stuff on your mobile phone is still really difficult, especially if you don't have a specific app for it, like trying to browse to something and what have you. It's really quite a pain. So that's another thing. That's where we see a lot of people fall victim to a lot of scams and stuff, because they're on their phone and they don't have really any indicators there they can go by. That one thing is in full screen. They can't, what have you.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. Anyway, while we were talking, and you did talk about crazies on the airplane, and I've got to play this. Hold on a second.
Okay. Of a belligerent passenger causing sheer chaos in the air. And it got so bad that flight attendants had to duct tape the man to his seat. Ever since masks were required on airplanes, flight attendants say that their work has become downright dangerous.
Now understand something. I'm a flight attendant. That means I attend the flights. Sometimes our job has us attending to crazy people. If you push us too far, you're going to have to attend this ass whooping. You see, because on this particular flight, I'm sitting in the jump seat and I'm just looking at him act a damn fool. He's spitting and cussing and going crazy. I say, that's enough. I got up and I walked over there. And by the way, This man smelled like a pack of Marlboro cigarettes, 4 shots of Everclear alcohol, and regret. So I know something's about to go down.
I love this guy. I love he's a comedian. That's not really the attendant, right? He is hilarious. This whole interview is a riot when you listen to this guy. I mean, the way he put it together and oh, I just love that. And I love it. Smelled like a pack of Marlboro, 4 shots of Everclear alcohol, and regret. I just love that guy. That is a fantastic one, folks. We will find and link to the actual full video for that in the comments here. If y'all are on the podcast, you want to see the video. It is fantastic too. So good catch on that one.
So it's like you coming back from Vegas. You smelt nothing but felt regret. And on that note, we thank you for joining us. We will see you again next week. Well, at least I will. Maybe Eric will be suffering a slow, painful, agonizing death in the throes of. No, he won't. I hope not. Well, it would make for good viewing figures, wouldn't it?